Well, it's a great privilege. Very excited to be joined by Chad Veach today. Chad, how are you?
Feeling good, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing well in lockdown London. How's lockdown treating you and your family?
We are quarantined, but as we say, connected. We are living that homeschool life. We are eating a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and trying to just have some fun with it.
And you've become a bit of a chef, haven't you? I've been watching some of your Instagram clips. You've got some real moves going on there.
Truth be told, my wife is a chef. I just myself eating what she creates.
And do the dancing as well. Beautiful.
That's it.
Beautiful. Well, the great thing is we're all in the same situation in the sense this pandemic's no respecter of persons. There are going to be people here watching from Asia to Africa, Australia, UK, you name it. And I guess one of the things a lot of people have been asking and calling in about is how do we lead ourselves and the anxiety and the fear and the worry that we hold and lead others at the same time. So, the internal struggle as well as the external influence that we've got to use and lead people with.
Well, I think, leadership always starts with you. You really can't lead others until you lead yourself. So I think that, the first person that we got to conquer in this time is, ourself, our attitude, our faith, our mindset. Mental health is such a big deal right now. Week one, it was kind of like we're, going to binge watch shows and eat and, this is kind of fun. And
Totally.
week five is like, I'm going to lose my mind. So I think, it always starts with leading ourselves, disciplining ourselves to be the healthiest, best version of ourselves. So I can never give away what I don't have. One of my values in this whole time is to become a consistent, non-anxious presence. So I just don't have any anxiety. I don't have any fear. I'm not going to carry that weight. I can't give away the authentic, non-anxious presence unless that I'm receiving that and stewarding that. So I think that's just a really big deal in this time is that, we talk a lot about this line in our Christian cul-de-sac, faith over fear. Well, if that's the narrative of right now, I have more faith than fear. I really have to cultivate and activate my faith so that's like a really genuine part of who I am. It's not just these, I think people can tell if you're just slapping a Christian bumper sticker onto something and like these sayings, or if they're like, wow, that guy actually is operating and living in faith.
That's really good. Can you drill down on that in the sense, we're saturated with media reports and people are just consuming. And one thing you've been really good at is being productive during this season. So can you talk into consumption versus production in this season? How can we be productive and not just consuming fear and negativity and angst?
Yeah. Well, we made a pivot as a church, right? When all this happened, we go, okay, we're now a content-based company. I think right now your superpower in life, your superpower in quarantine is to be flexible and agile. That's the thing we've been trying to say to our church. Flexibility and agility is our super strength. So we pivoted right away with 4 main narratives. And that was number 1, who is God in this time? And who is his character, his nature? Who is God in crisis? Number 2, we wanted to give hacks to happiness, just natural, just practical things. This is how you can organize your closet. This is how you can stay fit. These are books to read. Hacks to happiness. I think the third one was entertainment, just trying to laugh, bring levity and laughter, hence all the sandwiches. And the fourth one is Zoe Cares. Like, what are we doing as a church to be the church and to help people right now? So I think that, the main thing right now is the pivot to who we're going to be and how we're going to carry these things out, how we're going to execute in this time of quarantine. Because when we come out of it, we got to come out better.
Yes.
We got to come out stronger.
Yeah.
It's going to be revealed what we did with this time. It's going to show in our jawlines, our bodies, our finances, just as a whole. So I just think trying to be really intentional and really practical about how to be a good steward of this time.
And your church is predominantly quite a quote unquote young church. I'd love to know how you kind of had a front row seat and seeing how they're dealing with it. What would you say about the culture that's been formed in by the young really during this time? Are you quite optimistic and encouraged by it? Have they got a few things to teach us and the older generations?
Well, I think I think it kind of took a while for them to kind of accept the reality. Maybe, in Los Angeles, at least, a lot of the young people are still like kind of out and about. But I think it hits real hard when you don't have a job, you don't have income coming in. A lot of people had to move. Los Angeles, like London's a very transient city. No one's from LA, so we saw a mass exodus of people and students having to go back home.
Yeah.
So I think the thing about young people that I appreciate in this time, though, is that they're vocal. They are communicating. They are, commenting. They are trying to be on, Zooms. We set a record this last Sunday for the most people we've ever had serve at our church. We set a ZST record. And it's young people serving because they're at home. And they're like, I can serve on Facebook. I can serve on YouTube. I can serve, that's just such a cool thing to me.
Do you think that'll kind of follow through when we're back in our churches and carrying on doing our thing? Do you think this digital stuff will become cultural rather than a functional thing?
I do. I think it'll be, excuse me, I got a cough right now during COVID. Like, bro, that's not okay in the interview. Bro, distance. I'm hoping that out of this, there are some things that we just got rid of, and there's some things that were birthed. I think life is about always asking two questions. What needs to die in me, and what needs to be birthed in me?
So good.
And I think out of this time, there's going to be a lot of people that go, thank God for the quarantine, because some things that needed to die, that if I just kept living life, I wouldn't have had to face that. The thing about a crisis is that it doesn't build your character, it just reveals your character. It just reveals what was already inside of you. And so it's like there's some things that come out of people in this time. You're like, oh man, I didn't realize I needed to disinfect some things in my life. And so hopefully there's some things that are sticking in our culture moving forward that we're coming out of this healthier and stronger than ever before.
I love that. And you just mentioned the word crisis. Do you want to target that a sec? Like in your own life, you've had to deal with crisis of your own and this pruning process of life. Do you want to talk a little bit about how when God's not going to change the situation, but he'll use that situation to change you?
Crazy. That's just it right there. One of my favorite slogans right now on these commercials is Under Armour has this commercial that says the only way is through. Ooh. And I love that line because it's like you can't go under it, can't go over it, can't go around it. I guess I'll go through it. And you got to go through the stuff of life. You got to go through pain. You got to go through hardship. But what I love about that is that people admire your strengths, but they relate with your weaknesses. And so when you're weak and you're vulnerable and there's some humanity to you, people can get around that. They can rally, they can pray, they can uplift, they can encourage. When you're a superstar with a Superman cape, everybody's like, I can't relate with you at all. You live in a different stratosphere. But when you've got brokenness and humility, I think that's the great thing about right now is everyone's in pain. Everyone's uncomfortable. Everyone's, getting kind of smacked in the mouth. So it's like we all are together in this and we got compassion and empathy. I think empathy is on the rise right now.
I love that. That's so true. And are you doing things practical? I'd love to know, we kind of pull back the curtain and look into Chad Veach's home. Like, how are you trying to keep that joy level alive in your family and those in your care? Because you're always joyful. It's great. I know you must have tough times, but you, whatever you go through, you've got this unreasonable hope, haven't you? I'd love you to share that.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you. I think that we're trying to teach our boys right now, about the virus in real time. We're trying to explain to them what's happening and how it affects people. So there's a side that I'm trying to raise my boys to understand compassion and care for humanity. But there's another side that I'm just trying to bring a lot of laughter to my kids. So we're playing like Uno, we're playing Sorry, we're playing. We've got Monsters version of Bingo. So we're playing board games and laughing and watching movies, and we're doing, we're making a cake tonight. Just I think. Listen, the reality is I can't even fathom how much I would have been away from them. If we were living life, I would have been away so much. I've actually gotten to learn my kids better, learn my wife better. And so in that regard, it's a gift. Now, I don't like the narrative that some people say God wanted us to reconnect with our families, and God's, having us slow down for this time to get, it's like, no. God is not the author of sickness.
Amen.
God doesn't initiate viruses, but God will use anything. So God can use this in this time. So in our home, he's using it with us just trying to, have dinner every night where, every night we go around the table and go, what was the high of the day? What was the low of the day? And then, we mix up the order sometimes, and then I'll do a follow-up question, and just trying to create memories as a family.
That's real intentionality. I love that. Do you think it'll be hard when, I know that people keep talking about a new normal, but do you think it'll be hard when we do go back to being able to move around and go out of our house to keep that up? Or is that very unreasonable thinking like that? Or do you think there will be a new normal where people will put patterns in place where they can actually be at home 3 nights a week rather than out 5 nights a week? Like, what do you think will happen?
I'm really hoping that will be our new normal. Like I'm
amazing
putting that in our schedule and putting that non-negotiable. It's crazy. When I got married, my father-in-law, the day of our wedding, he says, listen, don't ever forget this. You need to be home 3 to 4 nights a week to build a successful family. And it's been this time I've been thinking about that word of going like, when did we get to the place? What were we doing when we could barely get a dinner or 2 a week? What were we doing?
Yeah.
So hopefully we have some changes that have been made.
Amazing, man. That's quite a revelation. Do you think that a lot of people tend to make decisions based out of their emotions rather than with their head? Because I think a lot of this season has revealed a lot of people, they're of course anxious about loved ones and health. That's understandable. But there's a lot of complaining and a lot of decisions being made out of the emotional side of things rather than like our logical mind.
Yeah, of course. I mean, all of us make emotional decisions. We emotionally eat, we emotionally text, we're emotional beings. So we all make decisions out of emotions. I think right now, we have to be really careful. And it's the concern right now is, domestic violence is through the roof.
Yeah.
Divorce rate is through the roof right now. Consumption of the wrong things is probably through the roof right now to numb the pain and, just I don't want to face the reality of what's going on with my finances or world. Maybe a lot of males, a lot of guys aren't used to being home around their kids and family this much, so on and so forth. So I think it's really imperative. It's really important, that we understand how to grasp and think well and monitor our emotions and identify. Emotional health is so essential. You just can't win in life being an emotional toddler. So you can develop strengths in your field. You can hone your craft. You can get good at a lot of things. But one thing that will always pay massive dividends is being emotionally healthy. What is emotional health? When I'm in a dark place, I can still see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm not going to be defined by this darkness because I know eventually I'll be walking in the light. It's kind of what we're going through right now.
It's obviously not the only crisis we've had, right, in the world. I know it's huge. I mean, it's epic proportions, but like there have always been crises. Are there leaders you've been exposed to over the years that have been really impressive with dealing with crisis? And if so, who? And what did they do that impressed you?
Well, I think I was just talking to him last night on Instagram Live, but Rick Warren, is
Mm.
someone for me that I look at and I go, what's that guy doing during crisis? I'm going to follow his lead. I look at people like Chris Hodges and Dino Rizzo in Alabama, and I follow their lead. What are they doing? What are they saying in crisis? People like Brian Houston, people that have weathered the storms. I think Rick Warren was saying this is his 39th global crisis he's pastored his church through. So they come, right? Tornadoes come, hurricanes come, 9/11s come, viruses come. You got to get good at working it when it's bad. And working it is what? Feeding the poor, helping the sick, delivering groceries, being a presence, communicating. Right now in a crisis, you communicate 10 times more than you usually do.
Wow. What do you think are the three main assets to a leader during this time? John Maxwell mentioned us being hopeful and optimistic. I think that's a given, but are there three things that come to mind?
Well, the first one that comes to mind is communication. That in crisis, you need to be in communication, constant communication, always communicating with your staff, your people, the world. You just become, double the communicator that you were. I think the other thing is that, you need to carry that peace that we were talking about, carry that lack of anxiety, lack of fear, lack of, stress. You got to carry peace in the storm. We all need bedside manner right now.
That's
And I
good.
think the third thing is, really knowing what not to do in crisis. It's like going like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to post that. I'm not going to promote that.
That's good.
Just going like, I think sometimes we learn from the law of opposite. So those would be three things that come to mind.
And I would say I'm sure many people, you're a master communicator. How have you developed that? Because there will be preachers, teachers, leaders in their own sphere of influence that have to communicate. How have you intentionally crafted that skill over the years? You use a lot of humor, which immediately draws people to you. But how have you honed that skill?
I think communication is a thing that if you want to, you can work on it every day. I don't like the notion that people go like, I'm not a good communicator because I don't have a lot of reps. Well, I know you can make hundreds or thousands laugh if you can make the dinner table laugh.
That's so good.
I know you're a good storyteller if we're together one-on-one and you tell me a story and I'm just like, this is riveting, this is great, I can't wait to hear what's next. You're a great storyteller one-on-one, you're a great communicator. So great communication can be improved every single day. It's not this, 2 or 3 times a year. It's like, no, I remember when I was really working on my communication, every morning I'd write down my devotion. And so, I do a Bible reading every day, and then I write a soap out of it. I choose a scripture, I write an observation, I write an application, I write a prayer. Well, I started treating every day my soap like it was going to get published in a blog or a newspaper. And I wanted to write that observation so good and so clear that if someone picked up my journal and they saw the application too, they would go, that just changed my life. Wow. So I wanted to be deliberate with my words, my sentences, my phrases, thinking clear and communicating clear. Because I knew if I got good there, I can get good in front of people.
Who are the communicators, alive or dead, that have really impacted you and you would say, go listen to their podcast now, or go watch them on YouTube, watch how they tell that story or drop that truth? Like, who are they? Well,
I think 3 communicators that really impacted me and shaped my life. Number 1 was a guy named Wayne Cordero. He's a prolific communicator out of Hawaii. He's really who I studied under and really watched the most. Another guy is a guy named Judah Smith, who I just think is a savage monster, incredible, just poetry in motion communicator. And then another guy named Jensen Franklin.
Yes.
Jensen. So I just kind of, John Maxwell says it takes you 6 years to become your own voice. So as a communicator for a long time, you're an echo before you're a megaphone.
So good.
So that's fine. You got these influences in you, but eventually it's like when I'm receiving from you, It's you. It's not a carbon copy of this guy or that guy. It's like, no, that's you. And so you develop that strength and that confidence in your voice.
As a pastor communicating to a contemporary culture, what are you thinking about when you're preparing that message? What kind of person do you want your preaching to produce?
Well, I always think a couple of different thoughts. Number one is that I don't ever like coming from the premise that everyone knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because everyone doesn't know what we're talking about. So I think it's really imperative that we give people context to what we're actually saying, and being disciplined to take time to bring everybody onto the same page. So that's one major important thing. I think the other thing is like just also having the desire that people that are not churched can listen and understand what we're saying is a big value. So what does that require? It requires common man language. Like, what is the newspaper written to a fourth grader? So if the newspaper gets it, then we should get it. Then I look at Jesus. Jesus, he would always communicate this way. He would tell a story and then he would give a statement, or he would give a statement and then give a story. So I think that's a great rule for us as communicators, to tell stories. If stories were good enough for Jesus, stories are good enough for me. Stories are really windows into what you're saying. So I think it's really important to be a good storyteller as a communicator. So I want to know my audience. And who is my audience? Some unchurched people, but then the old saying, don't bite the hand that feeds you. Not everybody's unchurched. There's a lot of believers in here that we're trying to grow spiritually, trying to mature their faith. And so I'm definitely trying to speak to their full potential and who they are and the Jesus in them.
I love that. And what I'd love for you to do is to set some viewers free, right, who are only thinking that they're allowed to listen to other preachers to become a better communicator, because there's a whole group of amazing comedians, TED and all manner of people. I'd love you to just like set some people free from that religiosity. Like, I have to listen to Pastor so-and-so every week.
Yeah, I think, you can learn from anyone. You really can. But when it comes to communication, some of the greatest communicators in the world are comedians. Because communication boils down to one thing, and it is timing. Having the right timing. And so if I want to deliver an effective truth, Proverbs, Gospels, I got to have the right timing. So I love listening to comedians, TED Talks. These guys we don't even hold a candle to some of those guys.
Yeah.
And so to be the best, you got to listen to the best.
I love that. And the reason I want to labor the point here is because I think as communicators of the message that we have, we should be the best at communicating the message that we do have. So who, comedian-wise, would you suggest listening to? Like, give just some how-to principles, who to listen to.
I'm going to limit my reply here to a guy named Brian Regan.
Brian Regan. Okay.
He's a clean comedian.
Very good.
And he's hilarious.
Is he?
Oh, gosh. I think that show, Comedians in Cars with Coffee, with Jerry Seinfeld, and you just watch comedians interact, and you can see their timing in real time.
And do you rehearse that timing? Like, do you repeat it over and over and over again?
No, you can't.
It's an instinct.
It's an instinct.
Wow. So you can't.
I think so much of communication is ad lib. Our whole life is ad lib. Our whole life is just on the fly thinking, quote. So what's the discipline? The discipline is, Jesus said, a good man stores up good things in the treasure of his heart.
Yes.
And an evil man stores up evil things. But then he said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So if I've got a good, happy heart, I'm going to be able to laugh and have fun. If I've got a heart full of wisdom and truth and principles and values and scripture, it's going to come out of me.
Come on.
So the content you consume becomes the content you create. You got to consume the right stuff.
There it is. You're dropping bombs. Okay, and if someone could have coffee with you right now, sitting across the table from you, and they had an hour with you, what would you want to say to them? In the midst of a crisis, in the midst of the pandemic, I'm not giving a lot of context for whether they were young or old, like just a standard person coming to you for advice. What would you say to them?
Well, the first thing is that I wouldn't have anything to say, because if we sit down for coffee, I got a lot of questions. How are you? How do you feel? What's going on?
Amazing.
How's your family? How's your finances? What do you need? Can I do anything for you? I think that too often we feel like we need answers
Yeah.
and people want to listen to us. I think people need a friend. People need an ear. People need to be looked in the eyes. Jesus, whenever he encountered someone, he always gave them a look, a word, and a touch. Looked them in the eyes, gave them a word, and he had a touch. And so if we got coffee, I would love to look, give you a word, but I can't give you the word until I know where you're at. And a touch. And I think, so, you know, in our culture, we're afraid of the touch because everyone makes it sexual. Yeah. Jesus touched people, and it was not rude, and it was not awkward. It was a touch from God. And people need, the reason why people are going crazy mentally right now is there's no human touch. We need hugs. We need embraces. We need someone to put their hand on the shoulder and tell you that, you know, they're with us and for us. So I think that's what coffee would look like.
Amazing. And in a moment, it'd be great to hear where people can find more about you, follow your teachings, all that stuff. But this is obviously being broadcast across a lot of places. Someone's bound to be feeling pretty hopeless and despondent right now.
Right.
And discouraged. Could you just speak hope into them and why they should be hopeful and who they should be hopeful in?
Yep. One of my favorite scriptures is in Psalm 45, verse 6. David says, he writes, "Why are you so downcast, O my soul?" Then he answers, and he replies, he speaks to himself. He says, "Put your hope in God, yet I will still praise him."
Come on.
So you might be downcast. You might be feeling discouraged. You might be feeling overwhelmed by your reality. Let me encourage you. God is in control. God is seated on the throne. He is not worried. He knows the end from the beginning. He already saw this coming, and he knows where you're going to go. And so trust it. Put your hope in God. One of my favorite verses, I've never seen the righteous forsaken. God has not turned his back. God is not against you. He is for you. He is with you. And even if you feel like you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death, you do not have to fear evil. He is with you. His rod and his staff will comfort you. So be encouraged today. God knows what's going to happen. He's got you. He's with you, and he's for you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Chad. And as we close, how can there'll be people watching this being like, I really need to find out more about this guy. Where can I follow his teaching, what he's up to? Where can we find you?
Yeah, just like everybody else, we're on, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and our church website is zoechurch.org, and we stream out 7 services a Sunday, and so we'd love to have you join us.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time today. We hope you and your family stay safe and stay sane in the midst of a lockdown, and I'm sure we'll see you again.
So great to meet you. Thank you so much for having me.
Cheers, man. Bye.